Good to go.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Joe Stronowski. I'm Chair of the Rockport Planning Board. At this time, I would like to seat one alternate, Scott Gazelle, as a full voting member for this evening's meeting. With that, we do have a sufficient number of members here tonight to constitute a quorum. So I'm officially calling this meeting on March 28th, 2024 at 5:32 p.m. to order. The Planning Board is comprised of volunteers appointed at the discretion of the Select Board. Our charge is to ensure the applications that come before us comply with the town's land use ordinance and Rockport Comprehensive Plan. The board must determine whether there is sufficient evidence in the record, which is the material supplied by the applicant, to support a decision to approve the application. And so before we get started this evening, does anyone on the board wish to identify a conflict of interest on any of the applications presented tonight that would make it difficult to judge these applications fairly and objectively? If so, I ask you identify these conflicts now.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm actually the applicant for item number 4 on our agenda.
Okay.
So I'll be excusing myself at that time.
Okay, thanks, Jeff, for identifying that. And so you'll certainly be eligible on the other application that's before us this evening. And actually, that's a zoning change, I believe, that you're speaking of. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So with that, Orion, did we receive any comments, either written or verbal?
No.
No. Okay, and will we be able to monitor comments online this evening?
I believe so. Let me ask.
Do you have the YouTube up, the live stream?
I've got the YouTube up, but it doesn't show comments on my.
Okay,
Right here.
so probably the only way you could do that maybe is with what?
Yeah, there's a comment section there on the side, so periodically we can check.
Okay, okay, you can see it, okay, very good. Okay, on tonight's agenda, we've got two items to deal with. One is an application, one is a request for a zoning change. And so with that, the first item of business, let's go back and look at the minutes from the February meeting. And those that were in attendance at the February meeting are eligible to vote on those. Is it the February meeting?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is. I didn't change the date, sorry. I changed it on the.
I think it was 15, wasn't it?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, any comments beyond what's posted on there? John?
I wasn't at the meeting, but I'm just looking at the language. We referenced something about something being further amended, but we never really specified
Which page are you on?
page. I guess it's the last page. It's down the boldface. Mr. Leclerc moved to approve the findings of fact as further amended, but up above, I wasn't at the meeting again, but I'm just reading this going, something doesn't make sense. That he offered a different motion, but then he withdrew.
I think that was a motion at the end regarding finding the fact and what, judgment of law or whatever the case may be, and that discussion we'll get into about that is what I think that's related to.
So I think there was some language, I don't know what it was, but at the beginning of item 1 that was proposed, that was, I moved to approve, Jan seconded, and then we discussed it with Tom in dissent. So I retracted my motion and offered up revised motion with different language. It was seconded and approved. I don't know if the record needs to state what that motion was other than approval.
Just approval, because in the findings of facts, that bit was clarified. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, John?
Yep, I'll withdraw.
All right. Any other concerns? Okay, all in favor of approving the February minutes, February 15 minutes as revised online there? All right. We got 1, 2, 3. Is that all that was here?
That's all that was here. That's
Okay,
here now.
all right. That's interesting. So does it take a quorum to approve the minutes?
So we got Joe, we got Jeff, we've got Jan, and Tom is there. So, yeah, that would be okay. Because that's the majority of who was present there. So.
Okay, it's more than the majority. All right.
You don't need unanimity.
Okay, let's move on from there. Item 3. Item 3 is consideration of a site plan review application for property located at 1075 Commercial Street, Rockport, and is identified as map 002, lot 169. This property is under purchase agreement and purchase and sale agreement between VIP, buyer, and JL Enterprise, the current owner, and is being represented by William Lane of Gartley and Dorsey. Good evening, Bill.
Good evening. Thank you very much for your time this evening. I'm Bill Lane from Gartley and Dorsey Engineering and Surveying. Also present tonight through the Teams link is John Quirk of VIP and Scott Vlasic of Bruce Hamilton Architects, who are attending and available for your questions.
Okay, if I could just take one moment to, for those individuals that might not be familiar with the process. So this final application review, you're going to give us an overview of what the project is. After that, the board will ask any clarifying questions we might have of you. We'll then take public comment, and then after that, the board will enter into deliberation and review the application in full.
Yep.
So go ahead, Bill.
So VIP currently owns a building in Rockland that they share with a tenant of theirs, O'Reilly Auto Parts. Both businesses are in need of space, and so VIP has actually now purchased 1075 Commercial Street, which is the site of the former Denny's restaurant and several other iterations, including most recently the Walker's restaurant. Recently, that building has been renovated by emptying out the restaurant equipment and has been offered by the present owner or the previous owner now. And I believe that you approved a use change for that. This is, again, a different change of use to retail and automotive service, which was discussed at the pre-application. In addition to this change of use to occupy this building, we are proposing to construct an 8-bay garage addition on the north side of the building and operate it as a VIP tires and service facility. So if you're familiar with the operation in Rockland, that is moving up to Rockport, and O'Reilly will occupy the entirety of that building down in Rockland. So we have prepared a submission consistent with the requirements under the ordinance, providing you with, among other things, a copy of the portal application, right title and interest, a narrative describing the scope and required written statement elements and how we meet the content requirements of site plan review, and then a narrative to address the 1305 performance standards. In addition to that, we give you photographs of the property, location map, tax map, and a lighting cut sheet. Subsequent to our submission, which Mr. Thomas found to be complete, we were also asked to provide photographs of adjacent buildings within 500 feet. And so we've provided that to the board to characterize the visual facades of most of those structures. Included in the package was a site plan, a detailed grading plan, and a architectural floor plan, front elevation, and 3D rendering perspective of the building. We have also recently received a revision to that rendering that includes the color scheme proposed. So I don't know if that is in the possession of the board, but we have that available if that's of interest.
Is it up on the website, or the SharePoint?
He sent it today.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, we'll get to that.
Yep, so if it's of interest to the board, I think we can,
Sure.
help with that. Otherwise, carry forward as, but it will not be that monochrome gray that currently is up on the monitor. And that is the scope of the project. There are existing accesses that will not be modified. There will be expanded parking to the north to accommodate the footprint of the building occupying some of the parking spaces that are there presently. And we will maintain existing municipal water and sewer connections and have to modify the power that is presently serving the property, because it will be routed differently to avoid a conflict with the building footprint. So, with that, I await your interest and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Okay, so before the board starts with going through the compliance with land use ordinance, is there anyone in the public that cares to offer any comments on this application? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public comment section on this application and proceed with deliberations. Okay, any general questions first for Bill about his presentation? No? Okay, well, let's, hearing none, let's go ahead and,
Well, is this, I do, Joe, is this a representative drawing of the exterior? Is it you mentioned color, Bill?
Yeah, the color scheme is being considered to be not monochrome. A number of VIP facilities use a gray and then a nearly white accent color. So that would be used to break the facade even further.
But the lines of the structure, well, it was there a minute ago.
I'm bringing up the new color here. I'm going to zoom in.
Yep. So the building footprint and facade has not been changed. It's just a revision to add a little more visual interest.
But this represents what you're planning to do.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thanks.
okay, so if I can, then let's go ahead and go through our normal process here. We start off with Chapter 13 and look at the site plan content and make sure that we've got what we need there. Anyone have any concerns with what was submitted in the application in section, being compliant with Section 1304, site plan content? Owner, the applicant has standing on the property. I think they've provided the drawings that are required, elevation drawings, layouts, property, and so on, setbacks. Okay, as finding of fact, would anyone move that this application is compliant with Section 1304, site plan content?
So moved.
Moved by Jeff, is there a second? Seconded by Jan. Any discussion on that? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Okay, let's see, 3, 6, 7, 7, 0, 0. Anyone opposed? No one opposed. Okay, let's move on to Section 900. Section 900, and I'm going to suggest the sections here that would apply. If any of the board members would like to consider other sections, that's fine. Please just call it out. So this is in the 906 district. So Section 906 would apply to this. 906 is pretty brief. Permitted uses, we're going to get into detail really on the permitted uses when we go through the tables. So let's do that. I don't think there's really anything to find in section 906. So let's go back to the tables, table 917 at the end of this chapter, and look at the permitted uses. All right, so commercial uses, in section C of that. I believe this would be classified as auto service and sales under the table of section C. And this is in the 906 district, and it appears that it is a permitted use in the 906 district. Anybody have any? Okay.
Yeah, Bill, my question is, how much of this space is retail space? Is that pretty much the whole building on the left?
Nope, that is inventory. So if you look at that floor plan, there is a customer service area identified with a tire display wall.
I'm not sure which floor plan you're.
In the architectural plan, there's a first floor plan at the top.
Okay,
And
so
in the
that's
foot,
all- that's
within the
all-
footprint of the existing building, there's inventory. And then there is a carved out space that's identified as a customer service area. That's the retail element.
Okay. So it's predominantly auto service.
Yes.
You okay with that? Auto service as a permitted use in this district? Any questions about that? Okay. Let's move on to the dimensional tables, which considers a number of factors about the size of the building and the density of the lot. Okay. So on the drawing, it talks about lot density, lot coverage. And in this district, density is what, 50%?
Yep.
50%?
Yep.
That's right, okay. Maximum density is 50%. If I look at the drawings, and I did take a glance at just some of the calculations here, what's stated is that the calculated lot coverage is 49,152 square feet, which is calculated as 27% coverage of the lot. And I think that's well within the 50% requirement. Other requirements in the table. Again, this building is, part of this building, one of the buildings is existing. So the setbacks, I think, are well within standard.
And the setbacks are annotated on the plan.
Right, I saw that. Again, it's a developed lot, street frontages are met, minimum street frontages. Any other concerns about the dimension tables as it applies to this? Most of the information is there, all the information is there. And my look through it, it looks like it's compliant with the dimensional tables.
Something about the 6,000 square foot footprint.
Yeah, that's a good point, Scott. Let's talk about that. So there is an existing building, and there is a new section that's being constructed. So the new piece is approximately 4,400 square feet, a foot shy. And The existing footprint was what, 5148, I think?
Yep.
And so in this area, the maximum footprint in 906, I believe, is 6,000 square feet per building.
Correct, and we propose to use a connector that
Correct.
complies with the connector definition, and in this zone, it, in addition to having to have a 4-foot step between front facades, it also has to have a maximum footprint of 15% of the larger of the two buildings. So I've taken you through a little missive in my
Yep.
letter to you that enumerates how we comply with that
Okay,
standard.
and that's defined, I think, in section 300, the definitions, that connector requirements. So that's how we got to where we are on that.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm kind of interested in the history of this idea of a connector, allowing you to connect buildings that then become larger than the square footage per building that's allowed. Does the connector serve any other purpose other than getting around the zoning requirement of less than X number of feet? Is it perhaps, from the drawing, I was wondering whether it's a fire block or serves some other purpose other than just as a way to get a larger building onto the zone?
The way that we are utilizing it, which would not necessarily be applicable to other projects, it does give us a chance to deal with the grade separation between the existing building and the floor elevation of the garage.
Okay.
Service
Let me
bays
also
are,
say that The intent there is that no single building exceeds 6,000 square feet, and that is to some degree to be able to prevent big box stores from coming into Rockport.
Right.
And so
Well,
they
that
would
was my
typically need
question.
more than a 6,000 square foot footprint.
Okay.
And so it's okay to connect multiple buildings together with this connector. It's something that's been there for quite a while, and that's what we see.
And what would we do if Walmart came to us with 10,000 square foot buildings, each one was connected to the other one by a little passageway?
Well, you still have lot coverage requirements.
Okay.
Maximum lot coverage, so there are different things that would come into effect. They would need to comply with the land use ordinance. That's what would
Okay.
need to be done.
Okay.
I'm not sure that would be
So
practical.
the history of the idea of the use of the connector is to prevent individual buildings more than a certain size.
Right, mega buildings, yeah,
That's
that's correct.
Okay. I just don't know where it came from now, so
Yep.
this is what I figured.
We'll talk about the connector size separately here, just as a compliance matter. Any other items to bring up in the dimension table? I don't believe the parking lot still meets the side setback based on the drawing that we see here, so that's not an issue. Okay, no other discussion on that, as a finding of fact. I find that the application as presented is compliant with the requirements of section 900. Would anyone care to put forward a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Jeff, is there a second? Seconded by Scott. Any further discussion on section 900 compliance? Okay, if not, then all in favor? Okay, 7, anyone opposed? No, 700. Okay, thank you. From 900, let's go on to chapter 1300. There's one section there, 1305, performance standards.
So, I have a question, Joe, about that,
Go ahead, John.
about parking and circulation. So about parking and circulation, Bill, because you're not moving the entrances from the road, you see that turn in front of all the bays? where, you know, you've got to go around, if you're, I'm thinking like a significant size vehicle, like a truck. You're coming up a grade, you're having to then turn a hard right.
Yep.
And wend your way around to presumably the unloading, unloading area, which would be around the back of the building?
Yeah, we're providing access to the rear of the building for the bulk of the deliveries as the loading area. And we've modeled this with a straight axle truck, and it can make that.
Sorry?
We've modeled this with a straight axle truck using the
So
conventional.
not a tractor trailer?
It's not the intention to deliver.
So maybe this has changed, but at the last meeting, I think, Bill, you said that it would be a box truck that would make deliveries, but there would be a trailer in the back that would be detached from a truck.
Yep,
That would store used tires that would be removed
Correct.
periodically.
yep.
So
So that will still occur. Yep.
Okay, so that is a semi,
Yep, that's a 40-foot box. on
okay,
a-
so there would be occasionally a semi-truck coming onto the lot.
Correct.
So have you modeled making that turn?
Yes.
That looks, what I'd be worried about is getting in there, having all those parking spaces filled, and then you can't get back, you can't go anywhere.
Well-
You got to back down to Route 1, which would be a mess.
No, yeah, they have the luxury of, scheduling that delivery and drop-off, so that would not be during service hours.
Okay.
Would all the spaces be empty? I guess I'm just looking at other auto repair places around town. In a lot of cases, they have cars that are there overnight, including the current location for VIP.
Correct, those actually are O'Reilly's service delivery vehicles. And so-
There's a lot of cars on that lot.
Those white vehicles?
Yeah.
Yeah, they all belong to O'Reilly. Yeah, so there's no intention for there to be vehicles left here overnight. It's not the typical means, and if they have to leave a vehicle, a customer vehicle or an employee vehicle, they would coordinate that vehicle's placement so it wouldn't interfere with anything they might have scheduled for deliveries.
John, you okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, but
I do share the same concern in that I look at this, and so our concern really is that a semi-truck, if it were going in there, would not block traffic.
Right.
How you handle it on your lot is up to you, and how you route things and move cars and whatever. It doesn't look like, I guess we weren't provided any information. From what I found, it takes about a 40-foot turning radius for a semi-truck to go in there, and it just seems that would be hard to maneuver through that parking lot. But it does appear that there's enough room on both of the ramps that truck could get off the road and not block traffic.
yeah, I mean, the best thing to do would be to put that entrance all the way down at the end, but
On the north end?
on the north end, yeah, where it makes, then you got a clear shot. Or a clean shot, I mean.
Can I make a comment? This is John Court from VIP.
Sure.
Sure.
Go ahead.
We anticipate the trailer for the disposal of old tires to occur 6 or 8 times per year. So the frequency is very minimal, and they call ahead of time and let our store manager know when they're coming, and they make sure that there's no vehicles in the way so they can pull right in and back up and remove the full trailer and drop an empty one. And we do it after hours.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you guys have thought that through, I'm just seeing if this is a very busy service center, and, if somebody comes in there during the day with a big truck, it's gonna be a problem.
Yeah, it would
Especially
be.
if that's your customer service area, I mean,
Yeah, it would be, and so it would be coordinated to not have that conflict.
okay.
Where on the site would that trailer be located while it was being used for storage?
To the rear, it would be parallel with the addition, just parked on the asphalt.
Yep. Just making sure that was okay.
Yes.
So we need to pull around the back of the building, that trailer.
I have a similar but
Yeah.
different concern or question about wayfinding. How do customers know which driveway, if they haven't been to the store, to use? Most of the customer activity is entered from the north side.
Correct. Yep.
But there seems to be equally wide or fulsome parking on the left side of our plan. So how would they know
Correct.
which way to go and
Yep.
not to have to drive
So
around?
we're depicting in that current plan the principal building signage on that northeast corner of the existing building. That would be the first visual cue, and then I'm sure that we would have a ground level entrance sign on that same face. There will be a pedestrian path to that entrance from the south side's parking, so it's going to be okay for folks to preferentially park where they will and walk to that entrance. And we do anticipate, to meet our ADA requirements, to the place where we can construct a level, sufficiently level pad for an ADA compliant spaces. To add the extra we need, is going to be on that south side. So there will be this newly constructed footpath that will take people directly to the entrance.
Right, so is all the handicap accessible parking on the south side?
Correct.
There's none on the north side?
Not on the north, correct. Yep.
Where is the sign gonna go, Bill?
That is going to be on the northeast, the road side, northeast corner.
So on the other side, all the way to what would be our right?
On the original building,
Oh, it'll be on the building.
yes.
Okay, I can't tell what's here, this is too small.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we also anticipate, Bill, the freestanding sign that will be out by the main entryway.
There's a statement in section 1305 about surface water drainage. I noticed that there was some riprap, I thought, near the road. Are there drains in the asphalt parking lot, and where do they drain to?
There are catch basins in the existing parking areas, and they are routed to the roadside drainage system. There's a fairly consequential drainage way, actually on both sides of the super shoes, and all these drains either reach the cross culvert or the municipal drains that relieve immediately adjacent to the super shoe parking lot.
Okay,
Both
those are-
sides of super shoe basically have a stormwater conveyance.
Okay, and it's stormwater, it's not going into the sewer
Correct.
system? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. And there are no drains inside the building, obviously, that go into that system?
Correct.
Landscaping section here, I'm going to reserve for section 800. I've got some comments relative to 800. I don't know if anyone else has anything on this particular landscape section.
I actually have a drainage
Pretty
question.
general. Go ahead.
The right side of the building, as we're looking at the automotive part, are you raising is that level currently, or are you gonna have to raise it to?
We're going to basically match that existing asphalt elevation.
Okay.
And so we will have that differential between the finished floor of the existing building and the service bays. It's
Okay.
approximately 3 feet. And as I alluded to, we utilize that connector to create transitional ramps to be able to access that space.
So you're not necessarily raising the ground. I guess I'm concerned about the property to the north. They're not gonna have any type of,
No, there's actually a ledge cut to the north of us,
Okay.
and so their grade is higher than us all the way across.
okay,
That's the Grange, and that building is substantially higher than even the curb cut and the
Okay.
drive up to it. So they probably, compared to any of the existing development footprint that's there, or this new proposed utilization of the north side, they might be
Existing one is here.
15, 20 feet higher with the building.
Yeah, that's gonna be removed, is that, okay.
Sure.
There were 2 letters submitted regarding existing utilities, the water and the sewer, and both of the responsible parties on those letters, Maine Water and the town of Rockport, stated that there would be no additional burden on the either the supply water system or the sewer system based on the new construction here. So that addresses the existing utility section. Bill, I did have a question. There was a statement in there about changing, let me see where it is, about changing the easement on the electric utility. Utility easement required for electric. I didn't, so is the easement on your property?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay,
there's.
you're just burying it?
If there's a primary line running over a property line into a piece of private property to feed a transformer, there ought to be a central main power easement.
Okay.
So in this instance, we're moving the location of that line, so we have a revised easement as part of the
Okay,
workout
it's
with
on your parcel.
CMP to get new service.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. Exterior lighting, they've provided pictures of the types of lights downwardly directed that would be used in the outside. Emergency vehicle access, did we check in with either police or fire, Orion, to see if there were any concerns?
Yes, I did, and neither have a concern. The fire chief, he said he had a concern. He said he talked with you about the tires and the flammable, and he said that there was a separating wall within this to keep it fine, to keep it safe. So, no, there's no other
Okay,
concern.
so you're saying it's okay, they resolved
It's
that
okay.
question?
Yep,
Okay. Emergency vehicle access is fine, I assume?
correct.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, Jim.
You went right over exterior lighting where I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, back to exterior lighting.
The lighting that you're gonna put on the exterior of the building, I'm concerned about skylight and ground light and timing for the lights, whether they're on any kind of a motion control system. I'd like to see the lights be as star-safe as you can get in a city. These are new, this is new installations. From the cut sheet, it looks like these are new designs of things, LED, I presume, and they're designed for that purpose. They will not be overly bright.
Correct. These are an LED lamped cutoff fixture that's a wall pack configuration, and they're there for, security lighting. So they will be on, and they're should be no more intrusive than the ones that are presently on that existing building.
I noticed from the cut sheet that you can choose the color of the illumination. Can they be chosen so that they are relatively bug-friendly, that is not attract insects that end up being killed by the lights?
Like the 3,500 color temperature or
Yes.
something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that can be agreed to.
Good,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. All right, any other questions on 1305 or concerns? All right, I would propose as a finding of fact that the application as presented is compliant with the requirements of section 1305. Would anyone care to move?
I'll move that.
Moved by Jan, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Sam. Any further discussion on 1305? Hearing none, all in favor? Okay, opposed? All right, 700. All right, so let's go on to section 800, which gets into a little bit more detail on some of the same things. And again, here, board members, I'm going to call out the sections that I think apply. If there are other areas that concern you, that you'd like to review, please just call it out. So the first one I'd like to go through is 801, environmental. In the case of the parking lot, there are materials being removed, a little bit brought in, crushed stone for the parking lot?
Yeah, we're proposing gravel base and paving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Water quality, you're connected to sewer. We talked about stormwater. Section 8014, there's no clear cutting going on here. Nuisances, I don't know, how noisy is this when, from inside the garage, when the doors are closed? Something that would be objectionable to neighbors?
Allow me to defer to John, but my general experience of closed-door garage bays is that they're not a consequential amount of, they're not a generator, so.
Bill? would you-
Yes,
John?
it's really interesting. The industry has gone away from pneumatic impact guns to battery-operated air wrenches, and they're very, very quiet. It's not like the old pneumatic gun that when I was a kid that I used to use when I worked at my dad's garage. So most of our technicians have these battery-operated wrenches that have more torque than a pneumatic gun. They're lighter. They have battery packs that are rechargeable, and they prefer to use those. They're a lot lighter to handle, and they supply adequate torque to, take tires and wheels off vehicles and install parts during a repair. So it's really eliminated any of the noise that we used to hear, 25, 30 years ago from neighbors.
Okay. And outside of the impact wrench, any other noise-producing elements?
Well, we spend the extra money, we buy screw compressors, so that it's just a lot more pleasing being a technician working in a garage that has a screw compressor against a normal reciprocal compressor that can get very loud and kind of be a nuisance. So we don't really have anything that generates any kind of noise issues. And all the stores that we operated, I haven't received a phone call from a neighbor, and I can't remember the last time anybody said that we created a nuisance because of noise.
Okay, thank you, John.
Joe, you said, I think you prefaced your comment by saying with closed doors. Is there an assumption or requirement that the work will always be done with closed doors, or?
That's not our requirement, no.
Yeah. So,
It's often done with open doors to get fresh air.
Yep.
into
Okay, so your
the-
question is?
well, I thought you asked, is there closed door noise?
I did.
The question really is there any noise?
Is there
People
open
do
door
it-
noise?
yeah.
Yes. Okay. Good question.
Scott, can you remember to talk to your mic when
Oh,
you
sorry.
move that piece of paper here online? Sorry.
John, would you care to comment on that? Open doors, if there's
Sure.
any noise it would emit?
Yeah, I mean, when it's cold out, the doors are shut, and when it's warm out, the doors are open. That's how we've been operating for years. Again, these newer battery-operated wrenches and the screw compressors have eliminated, you can be standing right beside this compressor, and you and I could have this conversation and not have to raise our voice. It's really remarkable. So I don't think, again, all our stores operate with the stores open when the weather, when it's nice out and warm out, but in this particular market, I would, say 5-6 months out of the year, the doors would be closed just to, keep the heat in.
Okay, so this may be, I'm not sure where your other stores are located, this may be a slight bit different in that this is, in this area, a combined residential and commercial neighborhood, and it just happens, I think, adjacent on the south side, there is actually a private home that's there. So that might be a little bit different from what you've experienced before. But hopefully.
Yeah, we operate many stores that have neighbors, rooftops that surround our locations. And this one with the residential lot being on the south side, I mean, that's quite a distance away from where the actual service work is provided. And again, even if it was on top of it, I don't think the neighbor would necessarily think anything was extraordinarily loud and create a nuisance because of the new equipment that we utilize.
Also, I'd like to point out that those bays open up on, like, towards Route 1. And that Route 1 traffic would be a lot closer to that of Butters residence than the noise coming out of this particular place. It's already kind of a noisy area in general, being the main corridor up and down the coast, so there is a little bit of that.
Yep.
Yeah, and our closest are Butters are across the street on Route 1. It's the dentist's office and the women's center, which tend to have their doors closed.
And they haven't adjusted their dental drills to be low yet.
I'll go inquire.
Screening that.
I was gonna say, it's the patients they can't get under control.
Yeah. Okay, I've got one last question in this section, and that is, since this is the environmental section, I think somewhere it was mentioned that the used oil would be stored in a tank. Where is that tank proposed to be located? Is that indoors or is that outdoors? And if it's outdoors, is it something covered
No.
that the
It's
elements
indoors.
aren't going to wash away?
It's indoors.
It's indoors, okay, all right,
Yeah.
so that would answer
Yeah.
my question then. So it'd be protected from the elements. And again, there's probably a truck that comes by and picks up that used oil also, I imagine.
Right, when we generate enough to fill the tank, Clean Harbors comes and pumps it out.
Okay. Okay, board members, anything else in section 801? We'll vote on these major sections individually with the finding of fact. Any other questions on 801? Okay, hearing nothing. As a finding of fact, the application as presented meets the requirements of section 801. Would anyone
So
care
moved.
to move? Okay, Jeff moved, second. Seconded by Jan. Any further discussion on 801 environmental? Hearing none, all in favor? Okay, opposed? All right, 700. Okay, the next section I looked at was 803, gets a little bit more into detail on parking, loading, driveway standards, and so on.
Have we done this before where we determine parking by square foot of intended use? It pretty clearly says parking is gross floor area, Bill.
Okay, so you're in section 803.1, and you're looking at the table, John,
Yep,
and you're asking about how the parking was calculated, I think.
yeah. How did he come up with his numbers?
Yeah, so I think I've annotated that I used, for employees, I used the industrial standard, which increases it to 1.2 compared to 1 for employees. I used the footprint of the entirety of the existing building for the retail standard, I believe, which is grossly conservative, and then I still came up, if I can read my own handwriting from this distance, requiring 23 spaces, and we have 53 on this property.
Okay, so my calculation was slightly different. I considered this retail space that includes storage on it and reception areas and so on, 10,602 square feet. If it was retail space, it would be 1 parking space for every 200 square feet, and it would require 53 spaces, which I think you have.
We do.
Exactly.
I just find it interesting, you did find this was automotive service and sales, as opposed to retail when you were finding what the
Well,
use was.
unfortunately, there's not a service and sales category in the
Correct,
table.
right. So I tried to utilize what seemed to make sense, which is, there's a retail footprint that I grossly exaggerated to come up with the customer side of requirements, and then staffing, which I used the industrial, which anticipates shifts and overlap, so, which again.
Okay,
adds
so your
another
way and my
element
way
of
would both come out
conservatism.
with enough spaces. I say 53, you say 20, but we've got
And we
53 to
get
work
there,
with.
yeah, yeah.
Anyone else have any questions about that?
The only question I would have is, if it ever occurred that VIP wasn't here and that building wasn't used for storing tires, do we have a change of use where it has to come back before us again, so we can talk about that?
You want to,
You're looking in the
Typically would.
future.
so you came up with 23 and that there are currently 53, and you came up with 53 by your calculation.
Based on retail space,
So
yeah.
I would, in your motion, say that there are 53 spaces and it's satisfied. Then it's covered. They have the spaces, and then we don't have to necessarily worry about it, and them needing more, but we tied them to 23, and they go for a permit, and the code officer says, what do
Still
we do with
interested
this?
in his answer, in the answer to John's question.
What was your question again?
Well, right now, Joe's basing his I work with Joe's.
Uh-huh.
Joe's basing his calculation, what's the base square footage you're working with, Joe?
10,602,
10,602, so you took the total?
everything,
Okay,
total.
that's how you came up with your, how did you get your 53?
200 square feet, divided, and it comes out to probably 52 point something. I run it up to 53. 10,602 divided by 200.
Right, I guess I'll trust your math. So you did take the full footprint of the building,
Yep,
2 buildings together with the connector.
right,
That's how you came up with your number.
right.
Divide by 200, I'll go with that.
I think that for the purposes of, that we see that there's sort of a reason to approve this, I think that the last category where its use is not specifically listed are subject to our consideration of the practical use of this. I think practically, retail isn't quite appropriate because you're not going to get so many customers at once having their tires changed. So that's probably way beyond the upper limit
Yes.
for the purposes of VIP auto. So using a number that's less than 53, I think is reasonable.
Yes, I don't think this should be considered entirely a retail space. I think
Right.
that's ridiculous. That is if we don't have it defined properly, that's our problem, not
Right.
next. And I don't understand why this new owner is all of a sudden responsible for future owners' issues.
It's done.
He's not, right.
I don't think that's what John
No,
said.
that's not what
No,
I'm saying. I'm
no.
just saying that if a different use,
But that's what I'm saying, you're
Right,
not
I just wanna
assuming
make sure it
that they're not
triggers
gonna
a
do what
change
they
of
say they're
use,
doing,
and then
they're
we
gonna
can
do
look-
something different.
I'm sorry, Jan, I missed
I
that.
think it would be a change of use, John, if somebody came in and did.
Yeah,
different
that was
business.
really my
Yeah,
question,
yeah.
Jan, was if, yes, as it is now, I would agree with the logic everybody's using. But you never know what 10, 20 years from now will be, and it's,
Okay, yeah.
So, I don't know how many spaces is the right number of spaces. I know when I drive by garages around town, Rockport Auto up here in Rockport, and when I drive by VIP Auto Parts, or I go down to get a bowl for my car down there, I know the spaces are always full. And so I don't know what number it is, but it seems like a lot, more than 20.
Well, it is a retail use that's there right now.
Retail and garage.
Retail and garage,
Yes,
yes.
right, both, right. So I don't know what the right number is. We've got 53 spaces. If you calculate it as retail, it comes out just coincidentally to 53. Bill's, based on his assumptions, is calculated 20. Are you happy with 53 based on judgment? Or do you think it should be more, or is that more than, Jeff, is that more? is
Me?
that-
Oh, to me?
yeah, is
No,
that
I think
adequate?
53 is more than that.
More than adequate?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have concern about parking space numbers?
no, I just want to be consistent in how we're thinking of it, that's all.
I guess it seems like a lot, and I was just wondering if that was like.
Rob, pull your mic down if you're gonna talk.
To me, it seems like the calculations are
Police.
on the very high end. I guess it's fine if you're comfortable having 53 spots, but I didn't know if that was an undue burden or
I
anything. like
think
that.
there's 53 spots there today, the way it's laid out, is that correct?
Well,
Right, but
yeah.
to comply with,
we're expanding to maintain this parking count. So we are
Okay.
increasing the footprint of paved area to add spaces to afford circulation around the building and provide those spaces.
Okay, and so you did that on your own
recapture.
accord because you thought that was a reasonable
Yeah,
thing to do?
it's a reasonable thing,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I guess my view is it should be based on the number of bays, right? And how many cycles you do in each bay each day, because you can't always count on a customer dropping his car off right when it's ready to go into the bay and picking it up right when that's why, for example, Rockport Automotive has so many cars in their lot because people drop the car off in the morning and pick it up in the evening.
And some wait overnight or for a week for parts also, in
Right.
some cases.
Right,
Yeah.
so if you have 8 bays and you do one car an hour, then you'd need 8 times 8 is 64. So
I don't know that there's an algorithm though to calculate.
Right,
No.
exactly. Well, that's,
It's not practical.
And so I guess I view this in two different
Your
ways.
next,
One, there's the
breakout
requirements
session.
the board has. The other is the requirements that the customer have of the owner. And I would think that the owner of this property would want to keep his customers happy. And if there was more parking required, he'd probably look at doing whatever was required.
Yeah, we have footprint available as paved, as exists, to increase from that number, but don't see the need to stripe out anymore at this point.
Where would you go, Bill?
Behind.
Oh, into the,
No, parallel parking along the
oh,
the rear.
okay.
Yeah, we would
'Cause I
try
thought
not to,
they pretty
try not
much-
to have a new ledge cut.
Yeah.
If we could avoid it.
I mean, when they put that place in there, they had to blast away half a mountain.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going through, after the table, there's item 5, parking location. It is off-street. Item 6, there is no shared parking proposed here. Item 7 just talks more about spaces and the table and the CEO. I don't think that pertains to us here. Item 8, CEO planning board conditions. I don't think we're proposing to establish any conditions or modify. Table, off-street parking standards. We talked already about off-street loading standards and the trailer truck, and just to be clear, I think everyone understands it's not permissible to back that truck up or block traffic on Route 1. And I think as you've described it, that's not your plan, that the road, truck would be able to get off that road and get in the parking lot by picking the right delivery times. 10, landscaping of parking areas. And you propose some new landscaping on there in front of the parking areas, sort of.
Correct, yeah. One of the things that we're trying to do is de-emphasize that entrance
Right.
to the south, and we're adding some shrubs primarily, and then adding the white spruce, which would give us some screening through the year.
Okay. Questions about that? Okay, if not, let's move on to 803.2, driveway entrance standards. The driveways, as they stand now, are approved by Maine DOT. It looks like it needs to be between 60 and 90 degrees. It certainly looks like it meets that requirement on the north side, and I'm gonna guess the south side does also. It certainly looks like it's much more than 45. And these driveways, whether they're right or wrong, were previously approved. Distance between driveways and setback, the driveways are separated by quite a distance, more than 40 feet. Yeah, slope. I thought we had eliminated that driveway slope requirement when we talked about a different building on Route 1 there, and we didn't, apparently. So, these driveway slopes are existing. Do they meet the current requirement of not exceeding 4% within the first 20 feet?
I think the north curb cut does. I have not got the same confidence about the south curb cut. It is an existing condition.
So, Ryan, what do we do in the case that it's an existing drive?
It's existing, there's already MDOT approval, right? So it's one of those items, which is what happened in the last time. It was on Route 1, MDOT already approved it. So what were we gonna do?
Is the 4% a local requirement or is that MDOT?
That's local. And it could have been, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, MDOT might have had that standard at one point, we probably copied it into it. But, and there was talk at one point in time by having this default to MDOT standards, rather than having our exact language in it, but it hasn't gotten that way to the amendment yet, so. Right now, the way it stands, they already have their approval, the entrance already exists, they're not trying to change it, so. I would say it kind of is already grandfathered, because they're not really changing it in any way,
Okay.
so. Yep.
Okay, driveway line of sight with the landscaping you're putting in, I don't think you've got anything too tall there that would impact the line of sight. So that's the driveway standards section. Is state, just a question for Ryan, Bill might know the answer also, is the entrance and exits granted by MDOT, is that transferable? Does that go with the property?
Well, that would go
Permission?
with the property. Now, did you reapply to MDOT for this?
No, it would require a revision to the use, irrespective of owner, that would change by increasing the trip generation. In this instance, these are approved curb cuts for a restaurant, so this is a lower
That's right,
trip generation, and so therefore there's no procedure with DOT.
that's right, yeah.
Okay, so the license or permit is granted to the property and
Yes.
it goes transferred with owners?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see.
So they bought grandfather?
Yep, sounds that way.
I would argue that these entrances are grandfathered, because the traffic generation is far less than what it was currently entered into.
Okay, so we discussed parking spaces, talked about the access through the parking lot here. Any other discussion on 803? If not, as a finding of fact, the application as presented meets the requirements of section 803.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by John, seconded by Jan. Quicker, Jeff. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, 700. Okay, so that was 803. 804, cluster development doesn't apply. 805 doesn't apply. Livestock, 806 doesn't apply. Mobile homes, 807 doesn't apply. 808, access management, I think, should be reviewed. Okay, so it's got sections that apply specifically to routes 1 and 90 only.
And it's also applicable to driveways after June 14th, 2000.
When was this building first built?
Mid-90s?
Yeah.
It was before I graduated high school in '97, so it's right in there somewhere.
That's a little scary.
Oh, I know.
All right, any concerns in this section? Section 808.
And again, that it's clearly built after the date the ordinance specifies. It doesn't really apply, and then it would be worth it.
Okay, so given the restriction on dates, As a finding of fact, does the application as presented meet the requirements of section 808?
So moved.
Let me state that in a positive sense. The application does meet the requirements of section 808.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Yes.
Seconded by Jan, initial moved by Jeff. Any further discussion on 808, access management? Hearing none. All in favor? Okay, opposed, John, did you have a hand up?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, opposed? None opposed, 700. Okay, thank you. So let's move on. I would propose that there are no other sections of 800, chapter 800, that would apply to this application. Does anyone differ with that opinion?
No.
Okay, hearing no objections, let's move on to section 1000, performance standards.
Do we need
That, what?
we need a finding of fact for the whole of 800, even though we reviewed each of the pertinent parts?
For all of 800? We didn't do that in the other sections.
No, we
Maybe
didn't,
should.
but we can wrap that up at the end.
Okay.
Just do it
You
chapter,
want to just wrap
chapter.
them all up at the end?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. What did I say, 1,000? Sorry, I just lost my screen here for a second. Okay, 1,000. Okay, so 1,000 deals with some broad performance standards, landscaping, architectural aspects, and such. And so we'll go through each of these sections. We'll start with section 1002. 1002 is the landscape, area landscape regulations. So in this section, it talks about requirements of landscaping, different types of plants, categorizes plants that need to be planted. And these are dependent, it looks like it links them to the frontage on the road. And so that connection is made in, let's see, item 5 of front yard landscaping requirements. Before that are definitions. Front yard landscaping requirements on my page 10-3. Okay, it talks about signs, sidewalks. Sidewalks don't really apply here. And in section D, it talks about required frontage trees. And it goes through for every 100 feet. There is a requirement, as it says, for 2 canopy trees, 4 understory trees, 6 shrubs. And that's per every 100 feet. So there is a landscaping plan in here on one of the drawings that defines the proposed planting schedule. And that lists 2 canopy trees, canopy or evergreen trees, and a total of 8 plus 3, 11 shrubs that would be planted in the landscape areas. So is that compliant with those requirements? The lot property has, I think, a dimension of 460 feet along the road frontage.
In addition, we are maintaining existing trees to the south and to the north. There's
And
a-
you do get credit for that, yes.
18-inch maple to the south.
Yep.
and Twin hardwoods to the north.
And it says that, let's see. If any retrain, evergreen trees, for every mature canopy or evergreen tree existing in the buffer area and retained within this area, the required number of new trees shall be reduced by 2. So I counted that you had,
I believe 5.
yeah, five existing large trees. So that would reduce the number of trees required by 10,
Right.
because one mature tree is worth 2. So my calculations, I came up with, there would be 9 canopy trees required, but because you're keeping those 5 mature trees there, that would basically zero out the requirement for canopy trees.
Yep.
There would be 19 understory trees required based on the 460-foot frontage, and there would be 28 shrubs required based on 460 feet of frontage. And those are from that paragraph I cited there, paragraph D of 1002. 1002-5D.
Now, is it in the interpretation that, I mean, this is not a new commercial development. This is an existing commercial development, that the entire lot be subject because of the change to the standards of a new?
I would agree with that, but we're more than doubling the size of the structure on the property. That's a significant change to the property. So in that case, it would be, my opinion, that it would come into compliance with the current ordinance. This may not have been the ordinance at the time the original building was built back in the 90s, but that would be my, is that reasonable?
It's reasonable. I guess it's sort of this gray area where it feels like we're choosing when things need to be brought into compliance and when they don't. So the DOT has issued a permit for the entrances based on a previous application, not on the current land use ordinance. So we're just holding that, and that seems reasonable to me. What you just raised also seems reasonable to me, but there's no way that the planning board can clearly exercise its authority one way or the other.
This is probably judgment, yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay, just want to confirm I'm not missing something.
Yeah. So I mean, the appearance of the building along the road frontage is changing significantly. It wouldn't seem unreasonable to, and they did talk about dressing it up, to comply with the requirements as they are.
Yeah. So we are maintaining the existing shrubs that are there. There's some
Is that different from the
individual
red areas?
mulched footprints that are depicted on the plan, and then we are enhancing those with approximately 11 additional shrubs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would it be okay to say that we would meet the requirements of the ordinance as it's stated, 28 shrubs, 19 understory trees?
I think we can endeavor for that. Yep.
Okay. And that would be the combination between what's there already and what you add to it?
Yep.
Okay, great. And if some of those, you already attempted to break up the parking lot a little bit with 2 of the red dots there, red areas, that'd be great if you maybe expanded those a little bit and tried to break that up or shield a little bit. Okay. So that's 1002. Any other concerns or questions on 1002? If not, let's move on to 1003. 1003 are the architectural standards. So this is where we look at it, and again, a little bit subjective, look at whether it's visually harmonious with the surrounding buildings and the neighborhood. So for this, we should be using the newly presented design and colors that we had up on the screen earlier in consideration of this. The other thing, Orion, could we also bring up the photos? Do you have those on the SharePoint also of the surrounding properties? Just to kind of calibrate us here?
Does that include Home Depot?
No.
Okay.
While we're looking at these, Bill, can you describe what the material of the existing building that's on the site is? I've never stepped in front of it closely enough to look.
I don't know what the treatment is. Scott, could you ascertain from the photos? I don't know if that is
Stucco, ephes?
composite material, but it's now painted flat white, as you have probably seen. But I don't think it's Dryvit. It might be Dryvit, but I thought it was just some kind of a commercial, non-metallic applied finish.
Yeah, good evening. This is Scott Blassock. Bill, I would agree. I haven't been there firsthand either, but it does appear to me either to be Dryvit with a stucco finish or an actual stucco.
And what would the surface of the new structure be on the front?
So, Bill, I can answer that. Again, the members of the board, good evening. This is Scott Vlasok from Bruce Hamilton Architects.
Good evening, Scott.
Good evening. So, yeah, the surface of the new addition exterior, you can kind of tell in the, if we can go back to the newly submitted color rendering, there's a base about 4 feet high that would be concrete. And then above that is, it's a metal panel, an architectural metal panel. It's not really, depicted here clearly, but there would be some very faint, corrugated lines vertically on there. And as you can see, there's two different colors proposed. The darker gray in the middle is an accent color, and the lighter color would be more or less color matched to be, to match the existing restaurant, former restaurant, which would be, that exterior would be painted. It's currently kind of a pretty bright white if you were to drive past it today. This color scheme that's proposed here is a light gray and then a darker gray. So the building, the restaurant former restaurant as it exists today, it will get a little bit darker to be a light gray.
Okay, when you refer to the restaurant, from the picture we're looking at, it almost looks like a light green, sort of?
Yeah, it's really not. I do see on this screen, it does look light green. The colors in the 2D view right above are more accurate in terms of the color. Yeah, the 3D, I'm not sure why it wasn't coming out exactly correct, but the 2D pretty accurately shows the colors that are being proposed.
Okay. What's the maximum height of that building?
So the height, that is a good question. It's about 16 feet, maybe 18 feet to the high point.
Okay, so it's well under the 34 max.
Yes.
Okay. Did you mention that the top part of the structure on the garages would be corrugated metal, steel? I thought you said corrugated. It would be.
Yes.
Okay. And once again, the bottom would be like a stucco?
Yeah, it's actually exposed concrete.
Okay.
It's the foundation wall extends up, and that's really for durability. You can imagine with the automotive use, any of the metal panel that would be brought down low would tend to get damaged. There will be bollards, which are actually not depicted in the elevation view, but they are on the floor plan just above this. The floor plan shows the bollards that would be proposed at all the overhead door locations.
Okay.
But yeah, it would be essentially a smooth concrete for that lower 4 feet.
Okay, and those doors are, the garage doors are glass see-through doors. I think they said.
That is correct.
Bill said that last time, yep. Okay, so looking at 1003, proposed development shall be located, configured in a visually harmonious manner with terrain, vegetation, and surrounding parcels. Architectural design of the structures and materials and colors should be visually harmonious with the overall appearance of neighboring structures. For properties with more than one building, this would be 2 buildings, there shall be an overall design concept that demonstrates a cohesive relationship between the buildings. So, is this consistent with those statements?
Well, other than the color, we're talking, did you say a metal siding on this?
Proposed addition?
Yes.
Yes.
There's some kind of corrugated, what is it again?
Yep, it's a corrugated metal panel.
You've seen those, the corrugated metal,
Yeah.
Where have I seen them?
on metal buildings, I mean, they're standard. They sell them in
Okay.
Home Depot too.
So when talking corrugation, there are lots of different profiles of corrugated metal
Correct.
that one can look at, from almost flat with just a rib that basically the seam locks them together, versus a 4-inch or more deep corrugation that changes the look of the building altogether.
Right.
What are we talking about in terms of the profile of this panel? And I guess I'll ask the architect for this question.
That's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. The corrugation on this particular panel is a very mild. It's not the deeper one that you were describing. I do have a photograph. If I'm able to share my screen, I'd be happy to show you just to give you an idea of a similar. Give me one.
You should be able to share it when you're ready.
Okay. Yep, just pulling it up here. So. Okay, here we go. Share the screen here. Okay, are you able to see my screen? You should see a white
We
metal
got it.
panel. So this is from a similar VIP location. So you can see that depth of that corrugation there is probably about 1 inch. The ribs are about 1 foot, 12 inches on center.
So is that the type that you would propose to use here?
Correct.
Okay.
And is that the color that's being proposed as well? So we have a sense of that.
It may not be the exact color, but this is the profile.
Okay.
All right, so I guess, yeah, like you're saying, other than the color scheme being the same, we have a stucco place with a slanted, like a kind of a peaked roof, slanted roof section, which is the roof line, and then we have a metal corrugated building with a big flat roof. Other than the color, is there any other connection between the buildings that are kind of the cohesive relationship between them?
Scott?
I guess I'll attempt to answer that. No, I mean, there's really no other, material link between the two. What I will say is that, the intention to use a flat roof here is actually, more of a functional thing, I guess you'd say, because, VIP would really, they prefer the flat roof because that way we can drain all the water to the rear of the building, which in this case is the west side. The idea of any water coming down on the overhead door side, as you can imagine, would be, not preferred, due to the possibility that ice and snow could accumulate in front of the overhead doors in the wintertime. So that's kind of the functional driver behind having a flat pitch roof, a low slope roof, I should say, that's going to pitch toward the west.
So if I could just interject one more thing on that same thought. In the next section on roofs, it states, long monotonous facade designs, including but not limited to those characterized by unrelieved repetition of shape, form, or an unbroken extension of line shall be avoided. Roof lines should be designed to provide diversity and visual interest. So I hear what you're saying about the flat roof. That's fine. It could be a flat roof. There could be some type of a facade maybe on the front of it or something that might add a little bit more interest to it and make it even seem like it blended with the building that it's standing next to. And so
Yes.
I have in mind here that this is a garage. It's an auto repair garage. It doesn't need to be an architectural wonder. But if there was something that I feel that could be done to those 8 long bays there, just to break it up, I look at the current building that the applicant is occupying, and he's got actually a little peaked facade on the front of it in the current location that they're operating. Just something like that to make it look a little bit more interesting is what we'd be asking for. At least that's my opinion. I don't know how everybody else feels.
Yeah, anything would help.
Yeah. Also, I think the structure of the building is really, the material that they're building, that he's proposing, the corrugated aluminum, looks to me really awful, quite frankly.
Yeah.
We had a building proposition of last year, a man who wanted a pre-built building laid out on Route 1, and we took him to the woodshed over the fact that it was a corrugated aluminum building with absolutely no structural design or integrity or interest to it.
If I can, I'd like to modify that a little bit. We didn't take him to the woodshed.
Well,
What we asked him to do
of course
is we
not.
asked him if he could do some things on the front of the building
Yes, that we
to
did.
modify it, like maybe put some windows in or make it, again, a little bit
In
more
that case,
interesting.
but yes,
That was what we asked for.
right. And in this case, I mean, I appreciate the windows, the glass bays as opposed, glass door bays as opposed to steel, and I like the color change in the center of the thing, but the material to me still has a very, an industrial look to it that doesn't seem to me to be as nice as the finish of the building itself, the restaurant.
Okay, so if I could add to those comments, and I jump ahead to the next section, talking about building materials, and these all tie together, they all go along the same line. It states, building materials should be treated as significant design elements that define the appearance of the structure. Where possible, sustainable, long-wearing, recyclable products should be utilized. Citing the use of traditional building materials common to northern New England, including natural wood siding, brick, or other materials with similar texture appearance are recommended. Common materials that have the same visual characteristics as traditional materials are acceptable. So it doesn't have to be wood, but the point is that it would be something that's common in northern New England. So to support your point.
This is John Cork from VIP. Can I speak for a second?
Sure, go ahead, John.
Hey, Scott, can you pull up the full picture of the Wyndham location that has this similar architectural panel that shows all 8 bays?
Sure.
Because the town of Wyndham had the same concern, and we went back and made some design changes to the building, and I believe those were incorporated into your design.
Yes,
when
that is correct. So before I'm going to share my screen. Before I share that, I have on the screen the currently proposed elevations. And so I will just point out, I think the board has acknowledged this, but I will point out that what VIP would prefer to build would be one straight. Can everyone see the blue that I'm kind of highlighting on my screen?
Yep.
So VIP would, of course, prefer, probably from a cost standpoint, to build a completely straight facade. So recognizing the architectural regulations in this zoning, we did make that effort to bump this out and make the color change. So that it really is better depicted in the 3D at the bottom here, that plane change. So we did make an attempt here, and here's the photograph that John is requesting that I share. So this is kind of what it looks like in more. Now these, again, this is not the colors that are being proposed on this project. This beige would be the dark gray, and this white here would be the lighter gray.
I think there's no way around that this is 8 garage door bays.
It is.
They're going to see some
Yes.
repetition, and
Sure.
I think I agree with Scott's assessment that yes, functionally it makes more sense just to have one
course.
unbroken facade.
Yep.
And I think that that's an
This is
attempt,
an improvement.
that it's an
I agree with that,
attempt and improvement
It is,
to break that up.
yes.
So I'm somewhat satisfied. I have sort of deep philosophical issues with our ordinance and what it's asking applicants to do, but I'll put that aside because all Orit has to do is enforce it.
Right.
So I think that this is an attempt, and I think that it's an adequate attempt. I'll sort of reserve my judgment on the material because I'm not certain how impactful it is on Route 1 when you're driving 50 miles per hour.
Understood.
That's another-
And I also
another
appreciate this photograph. It has made a difference in the way that it looks. Makes a visual difference, yeah.
Yeah, again, like, sorry for being the youngest one piece in here, but the section where it says the use of flat roofs is prohibited on the facade visible from the street, except for buildings 3 stories or higher located in the downtown zoning district. How are we getting around that?
It is a low slope roof, it's not flat,
What-
so
what-
it slopes
I mean-
back.
Well,
What is the slope?
Right, but from the street, it
from the
looks like a
street,
flat line,
it's
right?
flat.
I think the intent is visual flat, and that's
No, and
visual flat.
I'm, right, I'm just kind of, I'm reading what's there and lining up against what I'm seeing like that.
Yeah,
I
mean,
understand there's a slope away from the piece in terms of pitching water away from it. What you're looking at is a big, long, flat line.
Yeah, I'm not an architect, but it appears that the original structure is probably the same flat roof, but they've done a little bit with the facade on the roof just to dress it up.
No, and I understand that there's a use-specific reason for not having something that slopes any of the snow towards the front side of that building. But is this one of those things where maybe all those bay doors shouldn't be on the front side of the building, or is it something where we need to end up, making an adjustment? Or I don't know how we adjust this, but in terms of what's there on the piece of paper versus what we're looking at, they don't seem to match up.
I'm sorry, so say that again. Are you suggesting the bay doors not be on the front? What are you suggesting?
No, I'm saying if you need very specifically to not have a slope on the front side.
Oh, okay.
And you very specifically need to have your bay doors away from where there's a sloped front part of the roof. Like, that is one solution. I don't know if there's anything else that we do that doesn't provide exactly what you're looking. I mean, you could put like a canvas piece on pipe that would kind of make it look like a false front edge of that, but all that does any snow that lands on it will dump off the front of that and in front of their bay doors. So like, again, there's no real way to do it. And I think, like you said, the original piece was trying to attempt this same piece by having that little slope and then up to the flat roof. But they don't have the same kind of functional worries that those bay doors do. So is this one of those things where you realize that there's a special use case in play, and then we use our kind of interpretation of there and realizing that this needs to be an exception because of the function, or is this one of those things where we hold it because it is what we're looking at?
Well, what would happen if you just, I'm not trying to design this building, but I'll try and design it. If you look at the building next to it, you take the cut, and if you just made that cut on each side, each end of this building, it at least would come a little closer in that direction. And it wouldn't be you wouldn't have to do it on the face. Is that making sense?
You mean like make the same type of roof facade on the front of this building? Is that what you're saying?
No,
What are
on
you
the
saying?
sides of the building.
On the sides of the building.
So, you looked at them side by side, it would just be that the face is just, doesn't have that feature.
Ironically, John, mansard roofs are also prohibited.
I
so-
know. I was just trying to make
Is that what that
something.
means?
Same issue.
Jesus.
Again, isn't that a flat roof though on the existing structure? I bet it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's
it's
just
mansard-
facade.
Yes.
mansard
That's just dressing
finish to
up.
it.
That's not really a mansard roof.
Yes, that is correct. It is a mansard roof on this is a flat roof on the existing building beyond, yep.
Right.
If I can offer one additional thought, I mean, as in terms of architecturally, just kind of this proposed application as a complete composition. Many times as architects, we try to kind of visually differentiate. In the spirit of the ordinance here, I think if I'm reading it correctly, the intent here is to really prevent any sort of monotonous facade. I mean, if a mansard roof was permitted, and we were to introduce that, to me, it actually makes the building a little more monotonous. And the second aspect of just something to mention here is, as architects, we try to, sometimes functionally differentiate the volumes of a building. So customers, are encouraged, of course, to enter the customer area, which is through this door here. We want to discourage customers from kind of gravitating toward the employee-only areas, which, of course, employee-only are going to drive the cars in and out of the bay doors. So, again, as I think someone said before, it is what it is. This is an automotive service area. It's more functional in nature, and so maybe these two volumes complement each other in the fact that they're tied together with the colors. But they are, by their very nature of the function, they're kind of separate anyway. So I guess that's why we were, proposing to treat them as different and distinct.
Yeah. My feeling is that if our task is to say whether or not it's consistent with the land use ordinance, it does not allow us to have judgment to say, well, it's an 8-bay garage, and so an 8-bay garage is going to look like an 8-bay garage. That's why the land use ordinance says these things, and to my mind, this is not consistent with what's written in the land use ordinance. Leaving aside whether or not it makes sense to have ice in front of a garage door or not, that's not part of the land use ordinance. So, and I don't know what the pitch is on that roof. It looks flat to me, but if you say it has a pitch, it's certainly not a 4 to 12 pitch, which is what's encouraged here.
That is correct.
The materials,
it's not 4 to 12.
Yeah, I don't know what T111 is, but.
T11.
T111?
T11, yeah.
T111.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but.
Plywood.
These materials are not in any way traditional building materials in northern New England. So to me, this doesn't comply with the land use ordinance in these regards, whether or not it makes sense for the purpose of the building. Maybe the land use ordinance doesn't want big automotive garages in this zone.
I don't think it says that.
No, I know, but maybe the wording is to specifically prevent something that looks like this.
Yeah, I'm not an architect, but to me, what the land use ordinance says is make it a little bit interesting and not all straight lines. That's the way I summarize it.
Yeah, but this is not, in my mind.
And so I think you could still have a auto garage that's fully functional, that's a low-cost structure that at least makes an attempt to comply with some of the requirements in the land use ordinance, I think.
So I have two observations, and I think it was a useful exercise that you requested we provide the photos of the surrounding building facades, and I think if you look at the commercial structures, there's no uniformity or pattern there, but in the picture set, there's picture 8, which is the newly renovated former KFC building, which is now a Dunkin', and has all flat roof elements.
Yeah, but that's only this wide. This thing is 8 bays
I'm
wide.
not drawing,
Yeah, that's why.
an absolute parallel there, I'm just
Yeah.
identifying that.
I thought about that, Bill, thanks for bringing that up, but it's not nearly the magnitude of the
It's
structure.
not the same mass, I fully agree.
Yep.
And I just would offer, and John Quirk's hearing me say this for the first time, so don't shoot me, John, but if a similar mansard element that is as as equivalent to the way it's constructed over the existing building were constructed over the center mass, the heavier gray mass, would that provide enough continuity between the two structures as well as a constructible 8-bay service garage to satisfy kind of both sides of that equation?
So would you go up with that section, Bill, or something?
Correct, above that plane.
Now
there
it's
would be-
getting more interesting.
a constructed, basically the same thing
Yep.
as exists over the top of the restaurant
Right.
footprint, something that is three-sided
Right.
and extends back along the
Right.
rear distance, that 36 feet.
Yep. Comments on that?
No, I mean, that definitely would break up the line and wouldn't call
I
it
think so, too.
what we're looking at. I think that's definitely
John Cork, you going to shoot me?
And again.
No, I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna shoot you, Bill. You know, I'd have to, reflect to Scott and to also, really to Scott Vlasic, the architect, to just, to, see what it would, how that would be built and make sure that, you know, it was structurally sound and, you know, not create any kind of issues with the roof or with the snow load or anything like that.
So I just want to reiterate, we appreciate the fact that you've come to Rockport. We're not trying to make it hard for you here, but we are just trying to strike some kind of balance here so that it is a somewhat interesting, attractive building that would fit in the area. So we appreciate your consideration of those things. So
Scott, do you see that as a, as something that could be achieved based on what Bill referenced?
Yeah, so let me make, maybe I'll ask Bill to summarize that again. Are you suggesting a feature over this center area, Bill, the dark gray area?
Correct, above that roof line band, and then extending back to add that visual interest, like it's false work that occupies three sides and the same footprint as the center three bays.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would help tie it in with the existing structure too, what you suggested.
So something like this. It's still flat, but it breaks the roof plane up. Instead of just being one single roof line, it's now two roof lines.
Is that what you were saying, Bill?
Well,
you're
I think
suggesting the same
it
angles.
could mirror, you know, it could mirror the slope of the existing false work over the restaurant building, is what I was thinking.
Oh,
That's what I
I see.
thought, yeah.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So the, yep, no, I understand what you're describing. Again, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, John, the concern would be if we made a pitched, let me put this aside for a second. So if we were to put a similar feature like this, that's kind of what you're thinking,
Yeah,
Bill, something like that?
Yep, just an offering along that line, similar as you might build out of a conventional built-up roof to surround equipment or something, just basically false work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then match the roof color at least of the existing building. So you'd have a black infill panel there. I don't think you would actually need to shingle that, but you could get enough of a visual equivalent
Mm-hmm.
to what's happening
So
in
I
the
guess-
existing building.
Sure. So John Quirk, my only comment back to that, again, we'd be creating a pitched roof surface over just these three garage door bays. So I'm not sure, again, how concerned you are with the water, snow and ice coming off of there. The vertical breaking the roof line, I like that idea, because that kind of almost references this feature on the existing building over to the left.
Yeah.
I think if the elevated portion were not set so that the only water that would fall in the front would be the water that comes off the immediate panel. That is, that the rest of it be slanted towards the back, so that the vast majority of ice or water would still go to the back. We don't want you to have the position where a lot of ice or snow or rain even is coming down right over the front of the bay doors. That's absurd from a business standpoint and from a pedestrian danger to the automobiles. So it would be a minimal height, and the only water that would drain off the front would be that very front piece. Everything else would head towards the back of the building.
And Bill, can you set that back just a little bit, 6 inches or so, to give the same effect and to have it address the concern that was just raised about the water, so the water would actually go onto the sloped roof and drain to the rear?
Yeah,
we
you'd incorporate
might be able to do
a
that.
panel gap underneath,
Yes.
or,
Yes,
at the band, you'd have a panel
Yeah,
gap.
right.
right.
Yeah, so that the front would drain through the architectural detail out to the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a little feedback here from the board. If they did something like that from our aspect, would that help make it more interesting, the lines of the building?
For me,
Everybody
yes.
okay with that?
From my standpoint, either of them would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think to Sam's concern about the flat roofs, I mean, I think we have, 1306 gives us discretion under certain circumstances to waive certain requirements, but we're all trying to improve the, we have the same goal in mind, which is to honor the spirit of the ordinance, which is to bring it into sort of this regional pattern language of design. So I think these are good suggestions, and we would then, have to subject the, or use the 1306 provision on some of the things that are more cut and dry, like no flat roofs are allowed.
Right.
What about the materials aspect?
Okay, so that was
I mean,
just
I
gonna
guess,
bring that up. So are the concerns still about the materials on the front?
I guess what I'm thinking is, are people more interested in, I would imagine the spirit of this ordinance is to create something more visually appealing and cohesive to the overall, area. I think people driving by would be more, what's the word?
Is it clapper?
I think the corrugated metal would raise more eyebrows than us adding some ornamentation to a flat roof.
If I may, I think the opposite, because I think at 50 miles an hour, the corrugation goes away, but the flat roof, the addition to the roof still remains visible, still is you won't see the corrugation until you pull in and deal with the building. And then at that point, it's an industrial building and you deal with it. I'm willing to trade off, for my sake, the corrugation on the front, the materials. I understand the value to the builder of doing that, trade it off for an improvement in the roof line, which is what most people are going to be seeing when they're driving by the building.
We're just looking here online at some of the VIP locations in Maine. There's some very attractive ones, Yarmouth, Auburn. They all have peaks on the roofs. They've got, it looks like clapboard siding or cedar siding. Is there a reason that Rockport design would be much different from those? They're pretty attractive.
Well, this is a pre-manufactured building, and these buildings are much more energy efficient. They're steel frame construction. Those buildings that you referenced are all stick built, and were built back in most of them in the 90s.
Right, and so again, I think we're trying to strike a balance here. We don't want to increase your cost of the building. If there's simple things we could do to the facade that would make it look a little bit more appealing and attractive, those are the things that we're looking at. So it would still be a steel structure, and maybe only the front side would have some different aspect.
Scott, maybe you have more experience than I do. I mean, if we all agree that element above, not the square one that you have there now, but the sort of sloped one that we talked about earlier, if the board thought that would, make it tie back into the existing restaurant portion of the building better, and sounds like we've solved the water problem concern that we had, I'm happy to explore any kind of hardy plank type looking panel, some other panel. I mean, Varco Pruden is one of the largest pre-manufactured engineering firms in the country, and they have all different types of panel styles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I guess, architecturally, my recommendation, and I'm hearing that maybe I'm in the minority on this, I would heavily favor the straight solution here. It's a much cleaner, I think an attempt to reference the existing building, in my opinion, is going to look a little incomplete and still cause some challenges. Even though it's a smaller amount of water, it's still going to cause challenges, John, with how we tie that roof into the flat roof. This solution here is very straightforward, and I do like the way, and I recognize the board's comments, that it breaks the roof line, because it does, in addition to now we have two plane changes. We have a roof plane change, and we have a facade plane change. So that's
we
the
also
first
have
thing.
the facade plane change with the connector.
Right. Now, in terms of siding, yes. I mean, there are. I think that if I'm hearing the board correctly, there may be asking for material change, just on the front here. And is that what I'm hearing from the
Yes.
board?
Yes.
That
Yes.
perhaps once we wrap the corner, the north side could transition to the corrugated siding.
Right,
I'd be fine with that.
that's fine.
So, John, we could certainly, work with you on some
Yeah.
options there. If you're open to that idea, we can certainly work with you on
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, again, I don't know precisely, but I don't think there's a tremendous cost difference in a different panel type that doesn't look like the corrugated panel and still has the high insulation value and all the other, still can take a beating and withstand, the typical use that a VIP store gets and will look, good 25 years from now. Those are, things that are important to us, and it would look better than the corrugated panel that, it seems that the board would like to see us change on the front.
Right. So we realize you guys are working on this on the fly here, and that's not a good way to do it. You probably want to go and spend a little bit more time to think about this. This is the last section that we're reviewing in the ordinance here, and I would suggest that if you want to maybe take a look at this and come back next month with some slightly revised depictions, that I don't think there's a lot of other major issues that exist here, other than that.
Right.
Agree, everybody?
Are you guys willing to give us the approval on everything else we discussed today and having us come back with a proposed solution to the concerns on the facade of the garage portion of the building?
Well, yeah, but if, you need the full ticket, though. We agreed on all the sections we've
Right.
gone through that you're compliant, and we voted on that, but we need to have all the sections compliant.
Right.
And so maybe what you're suggesting is, we could say, okay, it's approved, with the contingency that you're gonna go change something. We're just not sure what you're gonna change. So hopefully it's not gonna hold you up, but I'd ask that you come back next month with some different depictions.
Yeah. All they're gonna change is the facade of the bay portion. And
Is it?
yeah, the change
Is there a
the
different way to
facade
do that?
portion of it, yeah.
That's probably it.
So with this level of change to it and the facade difference, like I would hate to do a contingent, like, condition of approval based upon some material and then you see it built and you're like, that's not what we approved, so.
Yeah, it's a
No,
little bit subjective too. That makes it
You're
hard.
gonna have to look at it.
Yeah, I think so.
Would you have any reservation about running through the performance standards? Since that seems to be,
The rest of them? Okay, so
Yeah.
we covered 1001, 1002, I think 1003. Did we? No, we didn't. Let's go through the rest. No,
That's what we just did.
that was 1003, so we got to go through 1004 yet,
Yeah,
correct?
1004.
Right. So we did 2 and 3. So 4, let's look at 4. Parking lot design. This is pretty watered down compared to what's, I think, is an 800. I think only the first paragraph would even be considered here, the rest doesn't. Auto sales and boat storage.
Right.
Off-street parking. I see no problem with 1. I don't want.
No.
Yeah, so I don't think 1004 is a problem.
Yep. And then,
So it's 2 and 3.
Can you do your vote on 1004 and then we?
Sure.
Don't
And we'll
have to
just
do it
have 2
again.
and 3 left.
Wrap up the rest of them as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so as a finding of fact, the application before us is compliant with the requirements of section 1004.
I'll move that.
Moved by Jan, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Sam. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, 700 on 1004. I think that is the final section for us to review. Do any of the board members want to consider any other sections? Oh, let's, if I can, no, well, that'll be consistent. The code enforcement officer will, I think, I'm not sure they're prepared to talk about signs yet today. What I was going to suggest is, why don't we go back to section 300 on the connector, since that could tend to be a critical item. I don't think it's controversial, but let's just look at section 300. It's page 3-6 on my version. Connector, an enclosed or unenclosed structure built to create a visual separation between structures. Following design elements should be used. You change in the roof line, or change in roof form, height or slope, and they have done that. Face of the connector shall be offset by 4 feet. They've done that. Maximum footprint of the connector shall not exceed the largest of the 2 buildings it connects. And so the largest of those buildings
times
was,
15%.
It's nowhere near.
it's nowhere near, yeah, it's way under.
No, it's 15% of that largest building.
Oh, it's 15% and the category is
6,000.
6,000.
Right. So we've got in a plan note how we've computed our
Right.
compliance.
And it's compliant with that.
Yep.
So I think that, again, that's just one feature. I know it's compliant, but it's worth just verifying. So as a finding of fact, the application as presented is consistent with the connector definition as detailed in section 300.
So moved.
Moved by Jan, is there a second? Seconded by Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, opposed? 700. Okay, so we got that out of the way. Anything else, anyone else have any other sections they're concerned about? So we go back and revisit 1002 and 1003.
Do you want to address 1305?
1305. Did we
I
do that right?
apologize to everyone here for
Didn't we do that right?
enumerating it.
Yes, we did 13.
We did that right.
You did? Okay.
Yes.
That passed.
Okay.
We did, yeah, we did 1305. Yep. So I think that's it. Anybody else? No? Sam, anything?
Nope.
Nope.
that's it.
No,
Okay.
other than I think just, I'd repeat the sentiments that you've had, Joe, about how we like the idea of a business coming to Rockport, and we hope we aren't discouraging that in
No,
any
we
way.
don't want to get unreasonable.
No, both to John and Scott, we appreciate your interest and cooperation and rethinking. It's a welcome sign.
That's a good use of that property, and hopefully you'll be very successful.
Well, we appreciate you as well, and we'll come back next month and address the concerns on the facade and the roof line issues and have a workable solution for both parties.
Okay, we greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
So we just need to vote on a continuance here. I propose that we provide a continuance on, hang on, let me get it right here. On the review of the site plan application located at 1075 Commercial, map 2, lot 169.
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
So moved by Jeff, seconded by Jan. Okay, other way around, Jan proposed, Jeff seconded, okay. And all in favor? Okay. So 700, we have a continuance to next month. And what we plan on doing next month then is only going through those two sections to complete our review. And with a favorable vote on those two sections, all of the other sections have already been reviewed.
Great, wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience and,
Has the board selected a date for next month's meeting yet?
Fourth Thursday?
We could do that.
Yeah,
hang on, we're getting it.
the fourth Thursday, so that would be the 25th of April.
26, okay.
Hear that, 25 April.
25.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Bill.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm gonna step away from the board for the next
Okay.
applicant.
So, yes. Jeff Leclerc is stepping down from the board seat right now and is going to become a member of the public and actually represent the application that will come before us. So he will obviously not be voting or entering into any discussion on this from the board side. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is item 4. Consideration of a proposed amendment to the land use zoning map in regards to changing the zoning on a parcel located at 330 Commercial Street and known as map 20, lot 182. This proposal is to change the current zoning from 906 mixed business residential and 903 coastal residential to be solely 906 mixed business residential. And so I just want to be clear with the board before we get started with your presentation. So the board here is voting on accepting this or on making a recommendation to the voters?
Correct, you're making a
We're
recommendation.
making a recommendation to the voters.
to
So
the
this
select
will
board,
go
yeah.
on the ballot in
Yes.
June?
If the select board agrees to put it
In
on
June,
there.
if the select board agrees to do that, and we are just voting on a recommend or not recommend. Okay, just so that's clear to everyone. Okay, thanks. So, please, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jeff Leclerc. I'm a resident of Rockport, as I'm sure you're aware. I'm on the committee for Children's House Montessori School in Camden that is tasked with looking for property to build a new school. With me to my left is Ben Todd. He's the chair of the committee that's been tasked with that job. Also here, I'll just point out for the room, Rachel Nixon's the director of the school, Children's House, and Heather Rogers is also a member of the board of directors at the school.
Good.
So we have been for a while seeking a new property, and that task has become more urgent in that the school district has given us a notice of eviction from the yellow school building in Camden on Elm Street. So I'm sure you're all aware of the property. It's a vital part of the community in Camden. The presence of children there on that property has been, since its inception as a school, an important part of the neighborhood. The property that we found most recently at 330 Commercial Street to be available for sale seemed to come at a very opportune time. It's, we'll talk about the setting, but the location of it within our community was something we wanted to preserve. Go ahead, Joe.
If I could just say here, for me and probably most of the other board members, even though this is only a request for a zoning change, it would help us if we did have a little bit color behind it as you're doing.
Right.
To tell us what maybe would happen after we change it.
Right, and
So
I'm only going to color it briefly. We do not have a design for a school in that location yet.
Right.
We're in an agreement, a purchase and sale agreement with the seller.
Okay.
So we're representing the change that would enable us to be able to build on that site, since it is not an approved use
Right.
on the half of that parcel.
Got it.
Okay. Could you possibly bring up the map, just so we are talking about
Yep.
the site in question? So currently, the property is used as a bridal shop and a suite of salons that's located at the backside, and then there's a taco stand that's sort of sitting in the parking lot out front. How many acres is it?
I believe it's 3.35.
3.35 acres. Not showing on this map, but the zoning change happens sort of midway on a line running north-south. So this map that shows the lot in gray and green, it's sort of a slight change in color. The green is representing where in Rockport schools are allowed, and the gray is representing where they're not allowed. I'll just point out some of the budding parcels. Bleecker and Greer, which is formerly Hoboken Gardens, formerly a Hoboken Schoolhouse, is to the north. Harkness Preserve is to the east, and that occupies most of the abutting land toward the water. There's a residential property to the southeast, and then it's mostly commercial properties surrounding it on the other sides. The point of this green versus gray was just to point out that we are basically on the cusp of an area where it would be located. And should this change be enacted, we would be within it. It's not like this is a spot zoning location somewhere outside the zone. So the backside of this lot is completely covered in asphalt. It's set down by about 12 to 15 feet from Route 1. That portion of the lot is basically what's in the 903 zone, and that's the portion that we'd like to look at where we'd prefer to build a school building. It does abut up against the preserve land, and it's like a perfect spot for opening up onto the preserve. Go ahead, John.
Okay, so could you zoom in just a little bit on that, Orion?
Sure.
So just to clarify what you just said, you, again, you don't have a site plan today, but the thought is that you would go and construct a new structure back in that area where it is gray, in that corner on the bottom right.
Correct.
Okay.
So you would still leave the existing building and businesses where they are? That's the intent?
Yes, that's the current plan. So we have sort of a 5-year model of, it'd be 3 years for us to sort of get the school constructed in that process, and then we would leave that existing tenant's existing structure in front, and we've sort of negotiated with them for a letter of intent to stay there for 5 years until the school figures out what level of expansion is needed, or if we choose to do something else with the building, change the tenants, et cetera. So it's sort of their first step into being a landlord.
So is the likelihood that that building that's there now could go away in 5 years for whatever reason?
There's a potential. It could also be for future expansion of the school if they just choose to occupy the space. So we just toured it for the first time inside today. So I mean, we're really just leaving it as an exploration for the board to decide what they need in the future. So the current plan is to do nothing but leave the existing tenants in place.
And so with the current plan, as best as you can say at this time, to leave the impervious surface that's there pretty much intact all the way around that parcel?
We'd like to keep the existing drive loop, as you would. So there's the dip down into the lower parcel and then the drive back up. We have an option to purchase the second piece, the second parcel.
The corner?
The corner piece.
Oh, I like that.
So we are the goal would be to transition the parking, that's that current business, to the upper parking lot, which is more Route 1 suited. So the parking would be facing Route 1, and we'd have just the minimal amount for handicap or immediate drop-off for the lower bridle. or I'm sorry, not the bridal, but the salon suites down below.
Oh, so you wouldn't be changing the impervious surface up by Route 1?
Currently, no.
Okay.
What we plan to do is use that for overflow parking for those businesses, which I,
You really get into the site plan here.
Oh, I know.
And so,
I know, but I'm
I've
just,
I've struggled with this all month,
Yeah.
because it's a difficult issue that I'd really like to know what's gonna happen to it,
Right.
but the zoning is completely independent. And I think the board all needs to understand that when we zone this 906, it's gonna be 906, and anything that's allowed at 906 can be done there.
yeah, no, you're
Okay,
right.
because the school may be there for 100 years, the school may decide they need to move someplace bigger.
Right.
So they may sell it, and whatever is allowed at 906 will go there. So the zoning is really separate from the site plan.
Yeah,
So
but,
we shouldn't be trying to pin down a lot of details on site plan.
no, but it speaks more to use, because that's what we're, you know,
It is, but we can't hold them to anything that they say today, unfortunately, or fortunately.
right, but play this out a little bit. Yeah, I agree.
I hear what you're saying, and I'm struggling with it too.
Well, it's actually a slight variation on the issue that you're talking about, which is, we're assuming the schools would go in if this zoning change happened. If, for whatever reason, the ordinance was changed, or the zoning was changed, and you did not end up going through with the deal, then we're opening this parcel up to pretty much anything, the whole parcel.
True.
And it's right up against a, preserve and, so just my thought about this, and I'm not in any way opposed to the school going in there.
I had sort of the same concerns of changing this before we signed a purchase and sale. And I said that, like, we really didn't want to do that because we plan to build a school and that's goodwill. So we don't want to use our goodwill to change the zoning that someone else would benefit from. So like when negotiating the purchase and sale, that was pretty clear that we did not want that to happen. Because there was a discussion of changing the zoning first and then signing a purchase and sale. And we refused to do that just because we didn't want to use the goodwill of the local Montessori school to change the zoning for someone else's benefit. We foresee moving forward with this, we don't see any restrictions. Just so you know, like there are no contingencies on financing for this. It's really around the zoning as the last major contingency for us to go forward. We've already done pretty much 85% of all of the due diligence already. The last step would be just environmental testing, which we're holding off until we know that, hey, we have sort of a green light on zoning.
So go through that again. What you're saying is you've got basically a done deal on the purchase and sale contingent on the zoning change. Is that correct?
Correct. There's a contingency in there that we can't build a school.
Well, yeah, I mean,
If we can't build a school on the property, then the deal can't go forward. So yeah, our contingency is around that the zoning
and
would
then
be
the only other,
changed.
one of the other contingencies, the environmental review and
Correct.
that sort of thing.
So
Okay.
you do need the zoning change before the purchase and sale agreement is finalized.
Before we would close, correct.
Yeah, I would agree that that's probably a reasonable thing. You wouldn't want to buy the property and find out you can't build it.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, and just-
I understand that, but what he was talking about not having it changed before you buy it.
No.
So, because they can change it, buy it, and then set up a restaurant, right? Like, I know you wouldn't. But I'm
Right,
saying, like,
to be clear, what Ben was saying was that we weren't going to, on behalf of the seller, come before you with our proposal as a school before we had an agreement with the seller to purchase the property.
Right.
We weren't going to do
Yep.
the work of the seller.
Yep.
Correct.
We were going to do our own work on this.
Yep, no, I understand.
Yep, it's fair.
But like we were saying before, this isn't about site plan or across, like, I know their intent is school, but we literally can't hold them to it, right?
Correct.
That is that piece.
But if it's not approved, then it's just back to where it was.
No, I understand.
Yeah, so I'm okay with that.
So, go ahead, Jen.
I have a couple of questions. One, who controls the Harkness Preserve? Have they been talked to about this? And second, would it be possible, instead of changing the zoning, to provide a conditional usage for the shoreline district that would allow it to have a school built in it under whatever restrictions we like to do, like X number of feet from water or whatever, however we map out this particular piece of property, so that it doesn't have to be, the zone doesn't have to be changed. We don't have to open it to any commercial usage at all, but we can do a CU to put in favor of the Montessori school.
So Ryan can correct me on this, but I think it's going to take a change to the ordinance to do that, because there are only certain structures, businesses, uses that are allowed in certain zones. We
Understood.
have to change the ordinance to do that. There is no conditional use. We can't waive it.
Well, then.
There are no waivers.
Well, we're gonna have to put before the voters changing the zone.
Correct.
Why not, we could also put before the voters the ability to do a CU in zone 903. But more important to me right now is who controls the Harkness Preserve? Have you dealt with them? Do they understand what the possibilities are? What are their comments about it?
It's controlled by the Coastal Mountain Land Trust.
I would assume so.
And so they have an educational program and have spoken with us about the benefits. So they have an outdoor educational program for schools as a program. And so they are encouraging schools to be in the outdoors. And we have an outdoor component to our education. And that's why we're looking for land that has access to the outdoors. And as a nonprofit, it's beneficial for us to teach our students how to use public land, not just land that we own that they can go build forts and things on, but how to use public land properly as a future citizen. So
I understand that everybody likes kids outside. What I'm asking is different. What I'm asking is, have you told Coastal Mountain Land Trust you want to buy a piece of the property that they currently control and change its zone?
But they don't have to. That's not a requirement.
I didn't ask.
You don't have to. You don't have to
I'm
tell
not
them-
suggesting it's a requirement.
No, but you don't have to. Okay, but you don't have to tell the neighbors of a house you're going to buy that you're going to buy it before you buy it.
I'm not.
to answer your question, yes, we've talked to them.
It sounds like you've talked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And they're in support of it.
That's what I'm interested in.
And
much as they
of
can.
course, in a site plan, a final site plan, the abutters would be notified.
Absolutely.
And they would have the chance to come in here and.
I just wondered if
voice
they'd
their-
already talked to them and they have.
To add also to this, all of the abutters of this zone change request have been notified.
I saw that in the package.
Yes.
But
Yes.
have you received any feedback from the butters yet?
No,
Negative or positive?
No.
And so, again, this is hard for me. We need to separate the zoning change from the site plan. And we're not approving a site plan here. There's no guarantees that a school would be built on it, although it certainly sounds highly likely. When we review the site plan, we could go through a lot of those details.
No, I agree with that, but I think it would be material if the abutters had a strong opinion against changing the zoning, and it sounds like they
They
haven't
were
yet.
notified and they
They
didn't
haven't
come
yet,
here.
so
They
I
did
think
not
that's
express it.
important to
I
note.
agree. Good point.
Right.
Okay, with that, all that?
Sort of.
Yeah.
Sort
Your-
of. I have
your
the- I
struggle
have the
with it the
same-
same way I
I
am.
have the
Yep,
same
yep,
struggle that
yep,
you have,
yep.
is the what if.
Yep.
It is unpredictable, which is why I was trying to figure out a way to finesse the what if with a conditional usage or.
My concern with changing a conditional use in the shoreline district is that would apply across the entire shoreline for an issue on one piece of property, one parcel.
So,
I understand.
And then who knows what impact that'll have
Yeah,
somewhere else
yeah,
down the road.
all true.
And let me further say that every time this comes up, I'm just astounded, and Orion knows this, that we've run a zoning line through the middle of parcels in town. And this is not the only one. This occurred all over town. And I'm assured that with the new comprehensive plan, it will be adjusted by parcel property lines.
Well, there's
So
a
we
next
don't
door
have this
neighbor,
problem.
next door neighbor on this one split.
Yeah, I mean, that just makes no sense to me, sorry.
Yeah, no, my perspective is, this change is almost insignificant in terms of where you're putting the boundary between commercial and not commercial. I don't think it, in my mind, it doesn't matter that they say they're gonna build a school or not. I don't have a problem with it, particularly if the abutters have been given a chance to object and they haven't.
Right.
Historically, if I may color this a bit, historically, that lot in the back was used to store vehicles that were for sale as part of the auto dealership that was out front. So whether or not there was a building there, it was being used for a commercial purpose. It's not completely covered in asphalt, but a lot. We hope to remove more asphalt than we put down, if any, if we put any down.
And that's a non-conforming lot, Jeff.
It is, it's non-conforming. And I will also say that we're serious, that we have an architect that we've hired. We've, a civil engineer that we've hired. We've put in earnest money into the property. We're doing our due diligence right now to make sure that the sale can go forward. We have a time pressure in that by 2026, June of 2026, we are out of Elm Street School. So we don't have much of a choice here. This change is sort of a pivotal moment for us, that if it were not to be changed, we would need to start over and look for other properties. I'll also, just because I went to the trouble of looking into the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan for under schools states that one of the most important factors of citing a school is its location. That schools are encouraged to select sites, this is a quote, where students can walk or cycle to school. Avoid sites that are only accessible by car or school bus, which can increase costs. Use existing services, facilities to save money. Select a site served by good roads, existing sewer, 3-phase power, nearby fire station, other essential services. This plan recommends that Rockport schools be sited and maintained within Rockport's villages. So I know this is in the site plan review that we're looking at use here. I just want to say that this is, I think, one of the higher, and I'm biased, but higher and better uses for a lot that is right now, you know, by most standards, just an empty lot in the back.
And I'll speak out loud here. I have absolutely no issue with the school going there. I'm just trying to look at it longer term, though. We're turning this piece of property into a commercial piece of property.
So,
Absolutely no problem with the school.
Essentially already is.
all right,
That's right.
well, exactly. So this kind of came up a little bit 2 meetings ago when we had a different business on Route 90 that wanted to make a shift from kind of a more rural residential zoning to, you know, I think it was 907 versus 906. It had a budding 907 property that went deeper into that residential neighborhood. We have, you know, on the comp plan as it stands, it said we wanted to kind of expand business along the Route 90 corridor. But that comp plan also says, and this came up during our, you know, our affordable housing workshops, why we didn't change the rural size lots is because there's also guidance inside of there that we want to keep Rockport as rural as possible. So we didn't shift, like that went down 6-1 because we did not vote for that change because we wanted to keep it more rural residential, more of those pieces. And I know this particular corner of the lot has already been paved over, so it's not like we're looking at trees. But in terms of our precedent, making these types of changes, keeping things zoned more in terms of if it's already kind of zoned out as rural and residential or a very large lot in residential, as the case with the coastal, that seems to have been the priority both of the residents of the town and what we've been acting on as a board most recently. So given that case, this seems like it falls in that same category of making those shifts back, other than, like I'd say the only thing that's separate on this is that section of the lot has been cleared versus it being trees. But when we went through this before, sorry, Jeff, this one of those pieces of where we didn't make that change very specifically because we wanted to keep those areas that are zoned with large lots for residential is what has been given to us as guidance to go with. So I have if we're doing that and we're using our own precedents, like this doesn't look like it's going to fit that piece. If I'm off the mark on that.
So are you saying that it's good use or not?
I'm saying that shifting the zoning off of it isn't something that we didn't do that the last time we were trying to shift for a specific use.
If I can, let me point out a couple, okay.
Go ahead, I'm just trying to gauge where our guidance is and what has priority based off of whatever.
Okay, so when I looked at this, the coastal residential, which it now is zoned, the back half of that lot, does not allow schools. But if you look at the surrounding properties down Pascal that are occupied, those are in the residential zone, what are R3, right, Brian? Pascal?
Pull the zoning map
I think it's right. Anyway, they're residential, not coastal residential. Schools are allowed in residential zones. They're not allowed in the coastal residential. The only reason the school would not be allowed there is because this elongated piece of property goes down to the coast, and it's coastal residential. That's why. Now, when I looked at this, and I thought about that too, going back to our past experience, about having something of a commercial use in the middle of a residential area, I was concerned about that. But when I look at that back corner property now that is gray, that is in the coastal residential area, the distance from that to the nearest residential structure is further than the existing building. So it's further away from the residential structures that are on Pascal now than the existing building is. So then I asked myself, if that's the case, is that really a problem?
I was gonna say, I mean, again, going to that same piece, the lot we were talking about on 90 wasn't any closer to any of the residential pieces either. Like, it was hanging out there on its own, doing its own piece. I'm with you in that regard, that you're going through it. I'm not trying to be
I think there are other issues
pedantic
with
on
that
this
piece of
very
property.
specifically. I'm just, in terms of how we look at these things and in terms of what we have to go by in terms of guidance, keeping things zoned residential or, I'm sorry, rural and or coastal residential, the larger lots, has been our guidance. Shifting away from that doesn't seem like, I mean, we can do it by case, but like, this is again, and that seems a lot more like not spot zoning in terms of it being in the middle of, surrounded by a sea of different zones, but when do we choose to make these accommodations, even if they are.
But
by-
Sam,
So
it's
if
referring
I
to
may.
Route 90 didn't have frontage along Route 90. The lot that wanted to be rezoned, there was no frontage on Route 90.
No, and I understand
So I
that.
think it's a completely different case.
Okay.
Further,
Yeah,
if I may, just from the recollection of that last meeting, I mean, that was 907, there was an industrial component of it, and it was an industrial use that wanted to expand into a residential zone to change it.
It wasn't industrial, it was 907, I
It
think.
was 907.
It's not industrial, industrial is a different zone.
No, industrial use is allowed in 907.
Yes, that I agree with.
Yes, that's what I'm
It's not
saying.
Okay.
That's what I was saying. And we had someone that was in opposition of that particular growth.
Many.
So,
Yeah, but they weren't the abutters.
no, I agree.
And issues with, noise ordinance issues and things like that, that's code enforcement and law enforcement, that is not planning board, right? Like,
Correct.
So when we were making those pieces, like, I know there was, somebody here that argued against wanting it to be for rock crushing, but that guy can just as easily buy the MRC lot, which goes back further and deeper into that same residential neighborhood, and turn it into rock crushing, right? Like,
Yep.
that's the piece of any permitted use in the area. And that's what this is, well, I know that area is down there now, if we have this, I just want to make sure that we understand exactly what it is that we're using in terms of our guidance and what we're doing.
That makes, I mean,
Well,
having a
we
precedence.
have, we have had other applicants, other property owners come before us with this exact same issue of
Yep.
being in two zones. And we've gone both ways on those, but we typically have erred on the side of allowing it, right?
No.
I'm thinking of the one we did allow was right up by the school, high school,
On Route 90, yeah.
Camden Exxon.
Yeah, but the one we didn't was out on Meadow Street, like, in the same January meeting, right? Like, they had a split down the middle of it,
Yeah,
and one side was on one, one
I
side was
mean,
on the
I
other.
get-
We decided against
But
it.
again, to be fair, that was like a 4-acre parcel. This is like 50 feet. It's certainly a lot different in magnitude, the impact, 50 feet.
I think we have to just consider this on its own merits and where it is, and to me, it seems like it's a small amount of land. It's right on the edge of this other area. It's already effectively being used as commercial space, and no one has complained about
Yeah.
it. It seems like an easy,
And it's a parking lot.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I do get that side of it. I just, again, in that same part, whatever we okay in that piece, and I know it's got a non-conforming lot in it currently, but that doesn't mean it can get a non-conforming building into it, which is why they're here. But it also butts against a nature preserve, right? Like,
Yeah.
if we're trying to keep
But
this
that's what
place.
we should consider, where it is and the amount and everything else, and not get too tied up in some other decision that was made, 5 miles away under different circumstances.
Well, I mean, precedent is what I was going for. In
Right.
terms of
Well-
like what we do in situations, I don't think it's negative from each side. We use guidance from the comprehensive plan. I'm trying to figure out which order those kind of stack out in.
So if I may, from the zoning ordinance, the description, the sort of at the top, description under the 903 zone, which is the coastal residential. The purpose is to provide, this is a quote, provide a low-density residential setting while respecting the natural saltwater shorelines of the town and other natural features of the coastal area, end quote, which I feel like is difficult to do when you have no saltwater property. So for this parcel to be in a saltwater zone when it's hundreds of feet from the water, 1,000 feet from the water, feels like it's in the wrong place. And I think I agree with Joe's assertion that that line that cuts through it is only by virtue of 2 lots over the back of it being at that point. All of those lots to the south on Route 1 are wholly within the mixed commercial business zone.
Somebody,
Do you know
when
the
they did this,
footage?
just drew straight lines for some reason.
Yeah, they've done it all over the place.
Yeah, they have.
And we have, what my point was earlier was that we've gone, we've looked at a lot of situations and landed in different places. To Scott's point, we've looked at the context and said, yeah, that works, or it doesn't.
Jeff, do you know the square footage of the 903 versus?
I'd say it's about 1.5 acres or an acre or so that's on the 903 side. Does that seem reasonable?
Seems reasonable.
Versus what's the total square footage of the lot? Sorry, I could.
It's like 3 1/4.
3.3.
My initial concern when I looked at this was that we were penetrating deeper into the residential area with a commercial lot. That was my concern. But as I looked at it further, and I looked at the size, and I looked at where a building would be located relative to existing residential structures, it didn't seem like it would have a major impact. The other thing I looked at was, and this is going further down a bad road, is to convert it from coastal residential, leave it split, but convert the back half to residential. Because that would be consistent with all the properties that go down past Scotland, almost adjacent to it. But that is just propagating a bad thing further, I think, if you leave it split and change it.
I think that's the definition of spot zoning.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
it's not really spot zoning, because, it's broken in half now, break it in half a different way.
Make a little
But that
spot.
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't.
I guess I'm less concerned about coastal residential versus residential, because it seems like you could build on either, and it kind of like what you're talking about. I don't know if coastal really applies here, but there is a trail right nearby, but visually, I don't know how close that is to the actual back of that property. Do you have any idea?
Yeah, so informally, folks will use that parking lot to park their cars and walk trails at Harkness Preserve. So the trails, there's a spur trail that joins up with the trails that
Okay.
are sort of the official trails of the preserve. So it's commonly used to access, but the entrance is really located off, I can't remember if it's C Street or
Yeah.
Yeah.
School Street.
I just didn't know if that property came very close to that trail, or if there was enough so regardless of what was built, there would still be kind of that buffer.
Yeah, and the woods come into the lot in question a little bit, but not very much. To the north side they do, and to the south side they do. But the asphalt covers most of this parcel.
So there's existing asphalt basically to the line.
Ready for a vote, or you still have more questions?
I think we're there.
I think what you just said before about instead of splitting it between, commercial and resident, and coastal, to split it between, residential and commercial, is not going the wrong way, is not another bad thing, but is a less bad thing than to make it, the whole thing commercial. I'd rather see it, some protection by having it all residential rather than, or partial, part residential, part commercial, as opposed to making the whole thing commercial. We don't know what's gonna happen in the future. So, see, I had not,
I'm sorry I suggested that.
well, you may be, but I'm not. I had not thought through the implications that John brought up and that you've brought up. You guys were thinking better than I was thinking about what could happen here.
It doesn't make sense to me to take a lot that's commercial in the front and tack on a residential in the back that's only accessible from the front. And that seems,
It doesn't make sense.
That's what's
to
there
split
right
any
now.
lot anyway.
right,
Yeah.
but in particular, to create residential in the back half of a lot that's commercial in
Yeah.
the front, I mean, that seems pointless.
Unless it was a substantial sized lot, like if you had a 6-acre lot there, and let's say that 020 Wood 82 was part of that whole big lot that goes down to the shore, then maybe it'd be a different situation if you're talking about splitting something.
Go ahead, John.
So, before we formally vote on this, I need to I'd like to understand clearly are we gonna vote on the actual wording? We're not coming up with the wording for the warrant.
Nope.
We just vote.
We're gonna vote whether or not the requested change would be made. That's what we're gonna vote on.
And
That's all we
the
got.
reason we need to do this, or we're trying to do this, is so that you guys can go ahead with finishing the purchase and sale of the property. So will you have the other contingencies out of the way before this ends up on the ballot? In other words, I'd hate to see this get approved by the town, this change, and then have some contingency that hasn't been, that suddenly blows up the whole deal after this is already zoning. has
Well, we're
been
not
set.
actually
Yeah,
approving it.
not
No.
this, but the town vote is what we're contingent on, not the planning. I mean, if this doesn't go forward, then the select board probably not gonna do it on their own. So our contingency is on the town's voting in approval.
Right.
Everything else is in the pocket.
But I think you're asking if the other contingencies will be cleared
Is-
before June.
Right,
Yeah,
and the
that's
other
what you
contingency is
said.
gonna be off the
Yes.
table, and
Yes.
how do
Those-
we
yeah,
get
those critical
assurance?
dates need to be accomplished before zoning. So I think the last critical date is in May for us, for
So
due
that'll-
diligence.
All right.
So if it fails
So-
its environmental in May and it's on the docket for June, it can still get changed over even though you guys won't have a school project there. Is that right?
Okay, but what am I trying to say here? Don't wanna see this get on the ballot unless it's the only remaining thing that is in the way of your purchase. And once we vote on this today, we're done with it. Our recommendation's going to the voters. Once the select board votes on it, which I don't know when they'll do it, in a month or something.
Do it at their April meeting.
So, then there
In a
might
couple
still be
weeks.
some contingencies that haven't been met that are apart from the town
But
vote.
that'll be done before the voters will go, and the voters will know.
Yeah, that's assuming a lot, but, I think if you put wording on the ballot that says, is it okay for us to, I don't know what the wording's gonna be, but is it okay for us to change this zoning here for this one lot? I assume they would put so that a school could be constructed or something, or would they just put in?
No, they won't.
No, you don't worry
No,
about the
they can't-
question.
they won't do that.
Because it
can't be worded that way.
it
I'm
can't be
sure.
worded
I'm
that
sure
way.
in like the Rockport resource or something, they usually give an explanation.
Not
of what,
doing it, no, because like that's all like giving a perception, like if something fails on their end and they can't do it, the zone's gonna change and the use is just open to whatever's allowed on our
That's what I'm
land
worried
use.
about, right there, right there.
Now, to your concern there though, and to all the abutters would be notified, like for whatever is going to be proposed there. They're going to put a school, all the abutters are going to get notified about the project. If that fails and someone else wants to come up, put something else there, all the abutters are going to get notified. So if an abutter is opposed to something, they're going to show up.
The site plan would still need to be approved.
Site plan would still need to be
Eventually
approved.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of the risk that we're all talking about. Like, it could happen 2 months from now that, you know, something could fall through and we would have changed it, or it could happen 20 years from now. But that's kind of what we need to decide,
Yes,
if we're comfortable with that.
Let me ask you a question. If we change this to commercial, it falls through, it remains commercial, somebody decides to buy the property and they come to us with a plan to build, I don't know, a granary on there, something, some commercial building. And the abutters are notified and the abutters all complain that they don't want this property to be used for this particular commercial use or even any commercial use. How much weight does the planning board or the select board or the courts or whoever put on what the abutters say?
Okay, in my mind, the abutters would come in and they would raise questions in the land use ordinance about the approval of a certain use. And that's what we would fall back on. The abutters can't just say, hey, I don't like this building because it's red. That's not a reason not to put it in there. They would need to come in and identify where there are discrepancies that it doesn't meet the requirements of the land use ordinance.
Once they satisfy all of them, you can't stop them.
Right.
Well, this is a leap of faith moment.
Well, okay, so I was there for 2 weeks. And then I looked at the piece of property and I looked at how close it is to residential structures and next to the Harkness Preserve. And I don't know that there would be a significant impact in a commercial use that was put there. I don't know about the size of the piece of land that we're talking about. It doesn't seem significant to me.
I mean, personally, I'm in favor of the leap of faith that says Montessori's going to build and stay there long enough for me to die not knowing that they moved.
Right.
Fair
Yep.
enough. Are we-
Yep, I'm with you. That's
Do
good.
we need a motion?
We do, okay, so I'll put it on the table here. So what we're going to vote on here is whether we recommend to the voters that the property be rezoned to be all 906 as proposed by the applicant. So that's what we're voting on, is whether we recommend that the property be consistently rezoned to be all 206 or 906 and not part 903, part 906 as it is today.
I'll put my name on moving that.
Okay, so
So-
moved, second.
All right, so can we have
Okay, so
discussion?
further discussion.
So what we're voting on, the actual wording is, give me that again.
This proposal is to change the current zoning from 906 mixed business residential and 903 coastal residential to be solely 906 mixed business residential.
Is
That's
there,
what we're voting on.
is there,
That's what the applicant proposed.
but what we actually vote on, what our motion is, can be
To
anything.
recommend it or not recommend it, what he proposed.
Just yes or no. We couldn't amend that?
To what?
Yeah, it's just a
Can we
zone
make our own
change.
up?
Yeah.
Can we make up our own?
Or just give some
Well, I mean,
sentiment of the
I mean,
planning board.
that's kind of hard. I mean, the zone is 906 and 903, and it wants to change to all 906.
All right.
We could propose something, I think you're going at, we could propose something different than he's asked for.
Or we could just
The board
propose,
could go off and propose.
offer a little bit of,
No.
okay.
So, no, so they're requesting the following, and it's a yes or a no.
All right.
To theirs. Okay, well, can I just ask, Is there some small modification you would want make to it?
I would feel better if some of the sentiments that I would like to, that are,
Tell me in words, what would you change?
I'm having a hard time coming up with how to express it now, but it sounded good in my mind.
Do you want it to be contingent on a certain use?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think it would be
Can't do
Can't
that.
do
not contingent, but it would be more to encourage, the construction of the school or something along those lines.
I think that colors the vote.
I know, but it would make me feel better.
That'll probably come out.
Noted in the discussion part.
Oh, Ryan, can I ask?
All right,
Can I ask something very quickly? Are these maps eventually going to change to have every lot conform to?
So- Eventually, yes, to some degree. Now, there will be some lots that will not be in that, but I can't put a timeline on that.
Right, but
So-
theoretically, like this lot will probably also
Yes.
eventually conform to 903.
you can't really
no.
say that because
Or sorry,
people could
906.
split,
906.
people could split a lot between, I mean, there's all,
I suppose, but
everything's dynamic on
I don't
property.
think it would change.
Okay, any further discussion? We're talking here about the proposal on the table.
Right.
Recommend, not recommend.
Ready to vote.
Anything else? No further discussion? Okay, all in favor of recommending? Okay, all opposed? Okay, 700.
601.
Sorry,
Right?
Do I get it?
forgot.
Instead of
You can't
01.
vote.
Did
Thank
Jeff
you.
raise his hand? I didn't see that.
I'm trying to see.
We'll figure,
600.
yeah, 600. You're off of, you pulled yourself out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
except when.
Yep.
I heard a 601, so. I was just-
Oh,
Was one
make it a
abstain.
one?
No.
I would
I'm not
no,
abstaining
no,
because I'm
no,
not
no,
voting.
no,
That
no,
was a
no,
true
no.
statement.
Just making sure.
600.
Sorry, I'm still learning.
Okay,
Jeff?
that
please
was a
don't
lot
do
of
a
good discussion to get there.
pre-fail building.
It was a tough one, separating a site plan from a zoning change.
Yes. All right.
Okay, any other business tonight?
Nope.
Thank you, Jeff, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Will be adjourned.
Well, let's not rush it. Wait a minute. Do you have anything else?
I do not.
You don't have anything else? Okay.
I don't have anything else, no.
Okay,
Officially back in my chair.
I have no other business. Next meeting is in April. Okay.